So I have the duty and the pleasurable duty to introduce our guest speaker for today, who is going to talk to us about transformations in study abroad and how studying abroad in Ghana and specifically on CIEE has changed something, has transformed something in his life up until today. And I would like to introduce to you the person of Dr. Kambon. He is is a research fellow at the Institute of African Studies, specifically in the Language, Literature and Drama section of the Institute. He holds a PhD from here, this university. His master's was at the University of Wisconsin, and his bachelor's was from Morehouse. In fact, Dr. Kambon, you have a member of your school here present currently now from UW-Madison. In fact, he holds 2 master's degrees. Let me make that point clear. He graduated from Morehouse with magna cum laude. His interests include nominalization of serial verbs, functional typological linguistics, focusing on serial verb constructions, as we call it SVCs, in African languages, word formation processes in African languages, historical linguistics, focusing on reconstructions of Proto-Benue Kwa. In case you don't know what it is, when he starts speaking or after he's done speaking, you can ask him all of those questions. The Kwa languages are the languages that we speak. The Twi is part of the Kwa group of languages, as far as I know. So I have some bit of information there. African language pedagogy, African language curriculum and resource development, issues of translation in African languages, African language poetry and oral literature. The list can go on and on and on. He's that well versed. And I must say this, when he presented his PhD thesis, he won the Vice Chancellor's Award for the best thesis in that year. And this whole university, this is an amazing scholar. And we at CIEE are very, very happy to share, to say that he was our student for the academic year 2000-2001 academic year. He was here for a whole year and lived at Ish. I remember at the time I was on my way out to go get my master's degree at the time, and I was just leaving, but I was following up on all the things that was going on. And let me take this opportunity to once again introduce to you Dr. Kambon. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, I'd like to thank Kwesi for the wonderful welcome. And if I could, before we get started, I would like to introduce a tradition that is done in the diaspora, which is called libation. And I will make it very short, but whenever we have a gathering in the diaspora amongst African people, we do something to recognize those of us who are seen who are here. We've done all of that, and also those who are not seen. So very briefly, I'll do it in the Twi language, and then also in the Yoruba language. And if you don't know what libation is, then this is a wonderful thing for you to find out. Onyoko chile mkwami yechiro nsini ma wonsio. Asasi amponyemwa, asasi odemu asama ebieni die demrefadwie. Obosom ya somo do so nti yintumi momodi baako na se yefra baako na yefra mu nyina. Asiotano. Akonodi wonsa benkumini. Asujebi, asubuafo ase odifo. Munyina afretifo arafo apia na to. Emunyina mumra magimonsio. Na ne dian ene se ene fiada awia yesmo nkwana kwansan, yesmo nyansa, yesmo nkoso, yesmo mpuntuo. Ene nyema nyina efata. Ena de on pese nyankoso no de oboni burakra ma yeye. On hwe ase poto no nkofa na japade no mu. Oja nhye na so nyina se na nka baako. Wenya na msromo yi. Mo hira nyina ya hia hai. Mo hira miami pai. Omi tutu. Ile tutu. Ona tutu ori tutu laro ye. Ajuba Olódùmarè tẹ́rẹ̀ káyé, Ajuba Orúnmìlà, Ajuba Ìgbà Irúnmọlẹ̀ Òjùkọ̀tún, Ajuba Ìgbà Irúnmọlẹ̀ Òjùkọ̀sí, Ajuba gbogbo àwọn babaláwo, Ajuba àwọn ará iwájú, èmi lè rọ̀ yìí. Bí Èkó ló bá júbà, ilé àlọ́run, ọmọ tí kìí júbà, kìí bàpá, Ajuba, Ajuba, Ajuba ooo. Àṣẹ. So, very briefly, I explained that what we do with libations is that in understanding that for African people, we have a family reunion whenever we come together. And the family reunion is not only those who we can see visibly, it's also our ancestors. So with no further ado, I'll get into what we'll talk about today, transformations due to study abroad. And I would like to give you very briefly the structure of the presentation. So with the background, I'll go into why Ghana, and then also in the introduction, why CIEE specifically. And then we had lots of adventures. I was here with two other brothers from Morehouse at the time. And we had adventures during our first semester, in the mid-semester break, and also during the second semester. And then we'll also go into the outcomes, what I got from it. So if we can move forward. So the background, my mother, Dr. Mawia Kambon, she first came to Ghana in 1972 as part of a chartered flight with Nana Dinizulu. And Nana Dinizulu is known for being one of the first people to bring the Akan spiritual system to the U.S. When I talk about the Akan spiritual system, I'm talking about an understanding of Onyame, of Abosom, of Nanano. So this was back in 1972, and my mother, she said that she didn't know much about it. She just saw a flight for $200 to Africa. She said, that's what I want to be on. I don't know if you may have paid more than that. But so she came in 72, and I was born at home in 1979, and the Akomfo, these are the traditional spiritual practitioners from Nana Dinizulu's group. They're the ones who delivered me into the world. So there was this Ghana connection, still this Ghana connection. And my mother herself began training as an Okomfo, again, the traditional spiritual practitioner, starting around 1995, 1996. And when she graduated, she took on the name Nana Ifya Santiwa. The name Mawia Kamba, my parents, when they got married, they didn't exchange wedding rings. They exchanged a family name that they thought would encapsulate our mission as a family, with Kambon translating to in the spirit of the people. But she also took on the name Nana Ifya Santiwa in addition. And then she started what was called the Sankofa journey. And what that was, Sankofa, is anyone here familiar with Sankofa? Has anyone ever heard that word before? Okay. And that's also what you see here on the cloth, Sankofa. And what it was a lot of Africans in the diaspora who were interested in practicing African spirituality. Some of the background is over there, many of us have been in Christianity, Islam, and things like that, but we decided that we wanted to get rid of the religions of our conquerors and start worshiping the gods of our conquerors and learn what our own African spiritual systems were about. So a lot of those people, they ended up coming on the Sankofa journey with my mother in 98, 99. And the first time I came and it was just like, oh, this is mom's thing, oh, whatever. But between that first time and the second time, I had a very serious life-changing transformation where all of this African-centered consciousness was brought to bear, and it was a serious transformation. So by the time I came in 1999, I was troubling everyone to learn Chi. I said, what's the word for this? What's the word for this? What's the word for this? They started running away when they saw me coming and said, oh, here's the Chi guy. Because my mother was an Okomfo and I was there for her, or Chiame, which is sometimes translated as linguist, more properly as a spokesperson. But how could I do that job unless I learned Chi pretty well? So that was about the impetus. And then my mother ended up becoming the president of the Association of Black Psychologists for the year 2000. And that was the year I decided to stay on to do study abroad. So I stayed for the CIEE program 2000-2001 for my junior year at Morehouse. So why CIEE? At the time, I was aware of two major programs that were going on in Ghana. CIEE 1, which was based here at the University of Ghana, and then SIT. And for SIT, I knew that they traveled around a lot. You traveled with the group, you traveled. But I decided to stick with CIEE because I was so interested in the courses that they offered. And then these were the courses that I took in the first semester: language proficiency, TREE. And because I had troubled all of those small children and everyone else in 1999, they decided, okay, because I'm already conversational, that they would put me off to the side with Openina Jikun, who is a very well-known scholar of the TREE language. And I think he may have taught some of you, perhaps, right? So they said, okay, everyone else is doing the group class, we'll put you off here. So I started learning Anansi stories, and actually I'll be giving a presentation on it at IES next Thursday, this coming Thursday. And, you know, we were just going through everything he said. For you, you understand it, but we just need to work on pronunciation. I said, no problem. Also took intro to drumming, because I was aware of an Akan drum text, which goes like this: the path crosses the stream. I said, I refuse to leave Ghana without learning how to play that on Atumpan. So I started to take drumming. Also, I took traditional dance, and some of the same instructors are still there, learning Agbaja, Damba, so forth and so on. And then the main one that I was interested in was African philosophy, because at Morehouse they taught philosophy, but that was a misnomer because it was European philosophy. We started with Socrates, Aristotle, and then went to Hegel, Kant, so forth and so on. And I said, Kant, no, I can't do that. I need to know about my own African philosophy. So I decided to take that course, and also a course in African traditional religion. And that one was interesting because the teacher, Elizabeth Amwa, she said because I already knew the Tree language, that she would teach me in Tree exclusively. And that was a request. I said, I don't want any English at all. So fine. For the African philosophy, I have to say this. The instructor, when I came from all the way to the US to learn African philosophy, the first day I was so excited. I said, wow, I'll finally get to learn about these things I have been reading about, because I had read some of these philosophers. And the first day of class, the instructor started off with Socrates. Then he went to Aristotle. Then he went to so-and-so, Hegel, Kant. So I said, so you're telling me I went all the way from Morehouse to escape this, only to come into this? There's an expression in Tree, which is I ran away from the fire ants and then hopped straight into the fire. And that's how I felt. So at a certain point, myself and some of my friends, we decided that we would spend the time better going to get Bantu off at the but don't follow in that. The second semester, I decided that I would go full force and study Tree with native speakers who've been studying it their whole lives. So I did that. I took literature of a Ghanaian language where we studied poetry, we studied proverbs, we studied novels, plays, so forth, all read in Tree, all taught in Tree, all tested in Tree. I said, wonderful. And then use of a Ghanaian language, we wrote essays and things of that nature. And then other courses that I thought would be great, state and society in Africa. Well, where would we start with that? We start, of course, in Greece. West African church history, I didn't expect much from that, but societies and cultures of Africa. And I found that the common denominator is that everyone started in Greece, when I had already learned that the Greeks had studied in ancient Kemet, also known as Egypt, where they themselves wrote and said we studied all of these things in Africa. So I thought that was interesting, but I still, of course, benefited from it, and I'll come back to that if we can move. So why CIEE? And as I mentioned, SIT traveling seemed interesting, so I decided to go for the courses. My first semester on campus, I stayed at Ish, and that's not what Ish looked like at that time. At that time, Ish was surrounded by bush, nothing but bush as far as the eye can see. And you know, you have the night market, which they moved to right there. Back in that time, it was over near where we are now. So you had to walk all the way through the bush at night in order to come and get gose or something. So we suffered. It was character building. That's how I tell myself in retrospect. So for Ish, my first semester, I was washing clothes by hand, which wasn't too much of a joke because my parents, they moved from New York, Brooklyn, New York, in order to build their own house in the woods in North Carolina. Because as African people, we say we should be self-sufficient, we should be independent. So they decided to actually move beyond the rhetoric and actually do that. So all 5 of us lived in a room about the size of half of this stage. And we had no running water, no running lights. This is 2 parents with doctorates, both of them. But they said, we are going to do what we are about. Of course, we eventually moved to bigger things that we built. But so the washing clothes by hand, I said, fine. No electricity, sometimes fine. But the most fun I had was conversing about the upcoming elections. This was 2000. J.J. Rawlings was going out, and we came to find Kufuor was coming in. So I would always be speaking in Tree because I said, if I can't say it in Tree, I won't say it. I will go somewhere and learn how to say it and come back so that I can say it. So I would converse with the porters and the security, so they loved me to say, hey, Kwame Waba. I had a roommate from Morehouse as well. We didn't quite get along, and I won't go too far into that, but we had some other guys who I did get along with. They also were from Morehouse. They were right next door. And myself and the other 2, we had all of our adventures together. You'll see a picture of them. There were ladies from other schools, and I won't go too far into that because my wife is sitting here in the front. But some of them were very interesting. So, and as I mentioned, Ish was surrounded by nothing but bush. The night market was at the main gate. Oh, how we suffer when you are hungry and it's night. There was a woman who sold kose, that's the fried bean fritter, right here at the main gate, and she saved our lives. Actually, part of my bodily makeup is 5% kose, because that's all we had to eat at certain points in time. So I definitely thank her. We got a chance to go to the dungeon. This is one of the brothers I was mentioning before. And, you know, we decided that it was such a powerful experience for us to interact with our ancestors that we broke away from the CIEE group and we decided to go as a trio so that we could experience that, you know, ourselves. And it was very, very beneficial. This was one of the reenactments from Emancipation Day, I believe it was. So these are some of the images that we took ourselves when we were there. I had this slick panorama camera, and it was like the first time I had some really slick technology, and I was just getting my panorama on, as you see. We'll continue. So first semester activities, I mentioned some of them. We started learning Abaja, Asadria, I still do some of these when I'm just freestyling. I'll just work in some of these dance steps. They say, oh, you can dance. I say, ah. That's the power of CIEE. We were going around town to the art center. We bought the art center out. My parents had a bookstore and cultural center at that time, so I was sending things back to them. They said, yes, we have someone on the ground. Asasipa, the vegetarian restaurant, which is over near there as well. We almost lived inside of there. And there were some very beautiful women who worked there as well, but I won't mention that for reasons mentioned prior. And then we would also go up to Kumasi, to Meduma, a satellite, something like a suburb of Kumasi. And we would stay with Okonfo Nana Abbas at his place. And that's where my mother was training. So we always stayed there. We would sit around telling Anansi stories, learning the songs, learning the dances. Really, we had the goal of being super duper Africans. So we just soaked up everything that we could from this African opportunity. But during the semester break is where we had our biggest adventures. And when I say adventures, I mean that when I look back at that, I say that was very dangerous. But being young and fearless, we decided to go. So we traveled, we planned to go to Burkina Faso and Mali, and also further to Senegal to visit Aikwe Arma. How many people have heard of Aikwe Arma? You need to read him if you haven't. Specifically 2000 Seasons and the Healers. If you haven't read that yet, you haven't started to live yet. So I'll put my timer on and see when you're ready to start living, and you can give me a call and say I've started. and then we'll start counting from there. So we decided we wanted to go and see him because he's been living in Senegal. So we said, all right, let's go. Now, do we know anyone in Burkina? No. Do we know anyone in Mali? No. Do we know how to speak French? No. Do we know how to speak More? No. Do we know how to speak Dogon and Bamana? No, 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 no. But we decided that we would go. That's our adventure. So these are the Africans. Kojo Jesse, that's the one who you see in this picture over to the further right on the left-hand side. And then Kwabena Fosuhina, who you see on the right-hand side. Me, myself, Obadele, also known as Achiame Kwame. Right. And you see me in some of these pictures somewhere, middle, side, there. We'll continue. So these were the characters in this bit of a journey. And what we started doing is that as we were traveling, before we started, I sent an email to all of the people on our email list. Yes, in 2000 there was such a thing as email. We were, yes, not that old. So we sent an email to everyone and kind of spruced it up and like told it in narrative style, first person plural, because we didn't want people to know who did what. So we always said our adventure, then we said this, and it ended up adding to the suspense. So this is me and Kwajo getting ready to go, and then this is us at the border. Yes, we made it. And before that, I had gone as far north as Tamale from Kumasi. And I remember traveling to Tamale, they said, oh, don't worry, it's not far. I said, okay, well, no problem, I'll go. So we're traveling from Kumasi, from Meduma, we decided to go. We traveled, we got to somewhere around Broma Hafo region, Sunyani somewhere. And we went there first, they say, oh, it's not far, don't worry, it's not far. Said, no problem, all right, we're going on a detour, we'll go up. So then from there we continued traveling, 5 more hours. They said, don't worry, it's not far. And we weren't even going, we wanted to go to Paga, which is up at the border. When we got to Tamale, I want to say 24 hours later, they said, don't worry, Paga is not far. I said, we are going back. But we finally made it to this legendary Ghana-Burkina Faso border. And just like I used to trouble the people to learn how to speak Chi, I troubled these little girls to teach us how to speak More, mostly the major language up there. So I still remember how to say Nichibare, Fayure, Fayume Kwame, and so forth and so on, because I said, once I get an African word, I will always hold on to it because it's that valuable. So we continue. And we went to Ouagadougou. And Ouagadougou is a place of 1,000 scents. And when I say scents, like smelling scents, most of them are made of smoke. So when you go up there, the people there have gas masks and surgical masks and things like this. These are the people who live there. I said, we don't stand a chance. So up there they have mopeds, but one thing that we noticed is that there seemed to be more of a sense of African pride expressed outwardly, so you would see people wearing African clothes. In Ghana, we stuck out because if you want to know who we are the only people in the entire block wearing African clothes made by African people. So that was different, that we were going to a place that's like that. But again, there's smoke. You had moped smoke competing with cigarette smoke, competing with the smoke from the meat that they're frying, and that was the border. Then we went to Bobo Dioulasso, and you see us there with Husseini. Husseini is there in the middle, and he was our volunteer guide, who was also our volunteer thief, who decided to take lots of money from Kwajobi, you don't see in this picture, and it ended up with us having to have him arrested. And, you know, like I say, some of these things, they were quite dangerous because we didn't know anyone, we didn't know anything. We slept outside under the starlight on the side of the street, because when we got there, they said, oh, you're coming from Ghana? We'll take you to the Ghanaian community because we spoke Chi. So Chi got us through everything. So we had lots of fun with that. Just hook up with the Ghanaian community anywhere we go, and we moved. And before we went to Mali, we went to Bamfra Falls. If you see these thousands of tiny diamonds, this is the waterfall. One of the most beautiful sights you will ever see in your life. So we went to Bamfra, and we finally started to get a sense of, yes, we are finally getting to the Africa that we want to see. Independent Africa, non-colonized Africa, Africans who are resisting. And we saw these 1,000-year-old trees everywhere we went, this scene that went on for as far as the eye can see. and we'll continue. And we decided to go swimming. I was looking at that picture, I said, were we wearing clothes? Yes, we were wearing clothes, you can see better there. But we decided to just get in there and bathe, and we had lots and lots of fun there at Bamford Falls. The air was so clean, and the water was so clean too, so we decided to even take a sip of the water. That was very dangerous. I wouldn't recommend that, because we don't know what people are doing further upstream. They may have been washing their clothes, or I don't know. We continued. So finally we got to Mali, Mopti Sevare. And as I say, it was dangerous. One thing that kept happening was Kwadjo, the taller one, he kept getting malaria. So we kept treating it with neem. So it got to a point where it seemed like he was fully recovered, but then after about 5 days, boom, he had a relapse. Then we treated it with the neem, seemed like he was fully recovered, but it was so stressful, us moving and whatever, that his body never really got a chance to recover. But we'll come back to that. So we went to Mopti Sevare, that's right there at the border coming from Burkina, and I left this out, probably because it was so painful. On the way between Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso, we were ready for getting close to the Sahel, which is more, it had a warmer climate, you know, getting closer to the desert. But at night, it gets very cold. The closer you get to the desert at night, the colder it gets, because there's nothing to hold on to that warmth. So, and when I say it was very painful, I don't mean physically painful. I mean psychologically traumatized. It was so cold in the bus from here to here. So we were there, and we were dressed for warm weather. And we got into something like a trotro, but more run down. Not like these good quality trotros that you have here. And they kept trying to put in the window. They kept trying to put in the window. But they said, oh, we'll just leave it. So they left the window on the side. And as we were driving, we started growing icicles from our nose. And we decided to cluster up together. We said, don't ever tell anyone that I'm this close to you, but it's cold. So let's just huddle up for now. We survived it, but the most painful thing is that I had to use the washroom for all 7 hours. And it got to a certain point, I said, if I don't explode, I will live. And here you see me, so I obviously didn't explode, or at least they were able to sew me back together. So we'll continue. And finally we got to the Piece de Resistance, Dogon country. And I had read Conversations with Ogo Tumeli. Has anyone read that one before? If not, you should. It goes into all of the worldview of the Dogon people. And these are people who were able to talk about the rotation of the star Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. And there's one, it's a binary star system. And there's one that's visible to the eye, and there's one that's invisible. And it was only recently discovered, just like how Columbus discovered people who are already there. It was only recently discovered by the West. But these people had festivals that took place commemorating every single time that the smaller star goes around the larger star. So they've been doing this for centuries and centuries. So I said, I must meet these people. These are the Africans I want to know, the resistant Africans, the non-colonized ones. So this is part of what we saw. And we got a chance to go to a festival. We met a guy named Amasebu, who said, oh, I know all about the Dogon. Me, I'm Dogon. And I speak 1,000 languages. I speak German, I speak French, I speak Portuguese, I speak this, I speak that. We said, oh, he must be the guy to follow. Wonderful. So he actually did take us there, and we said we want to go to where the African people have retained their traditions. And as you see in the top right-hand corner is a church made out of mud. And we traveled so far. We said we went to places where there was no road, to the point where we were covered with red. We traveled over the hills, over the cliffs, up and down, miles and miles walking. Then we said, we want to see where these African people are. When we did that, we got there and the guy said, yes, my name is George, would you like some Coca-Cola? I said, interesting. So we continued. And we got a chance to see the Dogon people, and they were doing these dances. Each one was significant, talking about star movements that are going on, things that hadn't been discovered until after African people had already discovered them. So we'll move. And these are some of the images. This one here is showing you that same star that I was talking about. And this long, long mask, they go around like this with the mask, and you actually have to make sure that you are out of it because they will smack you upside the head if you don't get out of the way. But this is commemorating that cycle of Sirius A and Sirius B in that star system. This is what I had read about. This is where the elders went to have their decisions and things of this nature. These are the hunters. It was everything that I had read about, and I was getting a chance to see it. Let's move. And then I thought this was such a beautiful picture. The elders here, and then you see the child over there in the distance. And it really showed this intergenerational transmission. And I thought it was very beautiful. We'll continue. And on the way back at Bandiagra, we got a chance to see a lunar eclipse. And it was very interesting because everyone came out banging pots and pans for this lunar eclipse, saying that we don't fear the eclipse, we believe in Allah. And we thought that this was very, very interesting. So we started walking around with all the people who were, taking part in this lunar eclipse ritual. We'll continue. But because of malaria, as I mentioned, he kept falling ill with malaria. So we cut our journey short at Mali. We wanted to continue to Senegal. But we said, all right, we can't do it because we don't, or me, I was the one who was treating him. And I said, you know what? If he doesn't make it, they may blame me for this. So let's go back to Ghana. So we went back, we came to Ghana. And when we were in Ghana, it was very interesting that he ended up getting worms. Prof, you remember that?
Yeah, in the Volta region.
Yeah, in the Volta region. And all the people in the Volta region, they were all wearing their flip-flops, their chaliwatu. And he said, no, I'm in Africa. I want to be in touch with the soil. So he decided not to wear flip-flops. He said, we don't think that's a good idea. He said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So he went there and he ended up getting this type of guinea worm where it looked like he was shot with a shotgun, where you had these things in his leg where it's like you could put your whole finger in it down to the first digit. That's how deep these things were. And I remember that Prof would come and he would console him. And Kojo said, but it didn't really console me because he would be like, all right, buddy. Like it would be the last time he saw me. He said, no. But of course, Prof had seen people come and go and who didn't make it, so he was like, all right, you take it. And he said, no. So we'll continue. So in the second semester, because, and I won't go too far into it, because I didn't get along with my roommate in the first semester, in the second semester, I stayed off campus. Prof, remember that? Yeah. It was World War III, but I won't go into that. That would be too interesting. So, but I was on full academic scholarship from Morehouse. So it ended up working out beautifully because the money that they were paying to Ish and whatever for room and board, they decided to just give it to me as a lump sum. I should have said I didn't get along with my roommate from the first day. So I ended up hiring a boys' quarters at Medina Firestone, right along this way. Just being in the community, learning tree with the native speakers, having fun. I got to keep that money. So I spent most of my time at Lalibela, the Ethiopian restaurants in Osu, because Ethiopian food is my family's favorite food. We always look for excuses to eat Ethiopian food. So if it's someone's birthday, we go for Ethiopian. If it is, if the sun is shining, we go for Ethiopian food. That's how it was. And here they would give you an entire mountain. So we would tell the people there, I want a mountain. And they would bring it to you, and it was something like the equivalent of 50 pesos. So I lived in the Ethiopian restaurant. If you haven't tasted Ethiopian food before, take a copy of Ayekwe Ama's books and then start living with the Ethiopian food so you can just have your rebirth all at one time. We'll continue. So some of the outcomes. I was fine the whole time. I never got sick. The other guy, Kojogi, was always getting sick. But me and my sister, we are unique in that we're twins. But we weren't born in the same year. We were born on the same day, 2 years apart. And I always joke with her. I said, I kicked you out first just to make sure you would taste the world and tell me it's okay. But you lied to me. You said it was okay and you made me come out, so I came out. But that was, we're born on the same day. We had never spent our birthday apart. I said, well, it won't start this year either. I'll go back in time. But I went back a week before, on my birthday is when I went into a coma from malaria. And of course there they didn't know what malaria was. They said, what does he have? Perhaps it's cold. Perhaps it's this, perhaps it's that, but eventually they figured it was malaria. So I spent something like just short of a week in a coma. I went in on my birthday, June 16th, and that ended up being a good thing somehow, but I won't say how. Well, I'll briefly tell you. There was a woman who I was very interested in, and she came to the hospital, and my mother told me, oh, she was crying for you. I said, oh, that must mean she likes me, so that's what got me encouraged to talk to her. But I won't go too far into that story because my wife is in the front row. I can't remember any of those types of things. And as I mentioned, that we would send these emails back talking about our journey, and they were very vividly written, almost poetic. You know, we would go into these things, and the people we sent them to liked it so much, one of them decided to compile all those emails together as a book. So we ended up coming back being self-published authors. So all of those memoirs from the thieving and the whatever during the mid-semester break, they compiled them, gave it to us and said, this was the most wonderful thing we've ever read. We said, oh, wonderful. And as I'm wrapping up, one of the main things that influenced my trajectory academically, before I came to Ghana, I had instruction in Medu Neter. How many people know what Medu Neter is? One, she's learning it now. Okay, 2, 3, okay. All right, it is the language known as hieroglyphics, but in the language itself, they call it Medu Neter, translating to sacred words, divine words, words of the deities. And I had taken a course before I left, and then also when I came back, and my instructor said, you know what, because I would always make connections between Medu Neter and Chi. He said, you know what, you have to go to grad school for African languages. So he sent me to the place where it is taught the most befitting environment for African languages and literature, Wisconsin, of all places. Oh, condolences. So, the place where I like to say is evil cold, where you wear 20 layers and then the wind whips through you and you feel like you're not wearing anything at all. And where I was saying before, when it's 20 below, it gets to 0 and you say, oh wow, it's warming up now. That's when you say, I need to move to Africa. I can't do this. I'm starting to get acclimated. I'm scared. Then when it gets to 20, all of the Caucasians, they wear their short shorts and then their tank tops, and then you say, I must leave this place. But I ended up, of course, going and, you know, toughening through it, and I ended up getting, as was mentioned, an MA in African Languages and Literature, another MA in Linguistics. And after leaving Ghana, I had already studied Chi, but I also added to it Yoruba, Wolof, Kikongo, Kiswahili, which I had actually studied at Morehouse briefly before. Then a smattering of a few dozen other African languages, including Amharic, because of being in an Ethiopian restaurant, you have to learn Amharic. So I can order entirely in Amharic. Take me out of the restaurant, I can't do anything. But in the restaurant, I'm champion. And then also Portuguese from Capoeira, which was recently given World Heritage status by UNESCO. And then also got a chance to travel to Nigeria, Senegal, Gambia, Brazil. Really, the global African world interested me because of the horizons that were broadened, in part largely due to my experience at CIEE and study abroad. And I was so happy that I did study abroad because before I did it, I thought study abroad meant that you would study a woman, like in 1940s type of terminology. I said, no, it's so much more than that. I won't go into that because my wife is front row. But I learned it was studying abroad, the whole world. So I definitely benefited from it more than I imagined I would have. Continue. So outcomes, Masters in Linguistics, Masters in African Languages. Of course, I got out of my order, so I'm talking about things before I got to the slide. I ended up teaching various courses which were directly related to my experience here. Intro to African Studies, Intro Conversational Chi, African Biographies, so forth and so on, African Communication Systems, Yoruba, so forth and so on. I ended up getting an opportunity because of my experiences, all related to my specialization here and so forth. Teaching at University of Wisconsin-Madison, condolences. Northeastern Illinois, University of Chicago State, so forth, all the way up to University of Ghana. And now I'm a research fellow at University of Ghana here at Legon. They mentioned before that I did pretty well in my PhD. We'll continue. And I decided to repatriate to Ghana in 2008. Me and Kala and Ama, we said we are going. That's before Kweku's time. But he was there in spirit saying, yeah, go, go, go. I got my PhD in linguistics, and it was very, very long, a very long and arduous process. I tell people that was the very first thing that I ever did academically that I found to be challenging. Anytime before I would just, you know, do okay in the course, but I wasn't really, I said, this one, I'm even trying and it's hard. So I say, this is something. But I won it, I got through it, yes. Ended up getting the Vice Chancellor's Award for Best PhD Thesis. So I took that as a challenge. It's sort of like coming out and you're the Rookie of the Year. So now they have a lot of expectations for you or a target on your back. So now I have to make good that, okay, your best PhD, you can only run on the fumes of that for so long. What are you doing now? So I'm moving forward, quick. I got married in Ghana. We got married on Marcus Garvey's birthday, August 17th. Very symbolic for us. We have 2 children, Ama and Kweku. Ama Chamfunimaya. And then Kweku was born on Ghana's Independence Day. We're doing a lot of interesting things with birthdays. And I say we have very good aim to get it just like that. My wife, give her a round of applause. Not on the 6th, not on the 7th, she said 6 months. We'll continue. So in conclusion, I think it was a very good thing for me to do study abroad with CIEE. I mentioned the challenges, the very dangerous things that we did. I didn't even go into the dangerous things that we did, I haven't told you. Just because I don't want the people, the good people of CIEE to take the flag like, what were you all doing when they were doing these crazy things? I found it to be very enriching. Study abroad, it broadens one's worldview. It helps us see more deeply the connections between African people. And this is something that I found for Africans in the diaspora. Oftentimes we may look towards continental Africans for validation of authenticity, but getting a chance to learn about Africa in a very broad scope. My Kikongo teacher, when I was studying Kikongo, he said something to me that resonated. He said, here when we talk about being African, usually we're talking about this very small part of Africa, this fragment that either was cut out during the Berlin Conference or the ethnic group. But in the diaspora, he said, you all are the only ones who really internalize being African in the broad sense, where if you're learning about Africans in Brazil, that's fine because they're Africans just like you. Zimbabwe, all African languages are your languages because you're African. So he said, you all are the only ones who are African in that sense. And I said, that's very interesting. And I found that, well, you know what? When I encounter Ghanaians, they can't pronounce Yoruba very well. And when I encounter Yoruba people, they can't even say chi, they say pui. I said, maybe there's something to this broader view of Pan-Africanism in the global African world that we should embrace and say, instead of trying to bring what the continental Africans bring to the table, which is a very good thing, that we should internalize what we bring to the table as African people, and then we can put the pieces of the puzzle together for the betterment of African people. So that really also helps with our identities as African people in the global sense. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank CIEE, proceeding to the University of Ghana, and now African Studies, and I would like to say, Mesdames.
At this point in time, yes, we have time for that. We'll take some few minutes to take some commentaries and ask more questions, then we'll call it a day. So if you have a question or comment, just put up your hand. Okay.
Yeah, quick question. What was the book on the Dogon again?
Conversations with Ogo Temeli. There are actually 2 major ones. One is Conversations with Ogo Temeli, and I can give you the citation as well. Another one is The Pale Fox. But and then there's also another text by Charles Finch, Morehouse School of Medicine, Echoes of the Old Dark Land. And all of these things talk about ancient things dealing with astronomy, astrophysics, and things like this, things that weren't discovered until after people had been knowing it for thousands of years. So these are things that help us to learn what we don't learn in the West. And as I found when I came here to do courses, we don't even learn it here. And that's something that we're working on now at African Studies and other places. So I can give you the citation. Okay. Also look at Nile Valley contributions to civilization. That also is along the same lines of astronomy, mathematics, things that we're using to build pyramids with that they name after Greeks who said we learned from those African people. So there's something disjointed with our understanding of world history until we know about who we are as African people historically.
Any other question or comments? I want to find out, if you had to go back into time, what wouldn't you have done as a CIEE student?
Well, now I'm a lot more cautious about those dangerous things that I did. I'm glad we survived all of them, but I probably wouldn't have slept out in the streets in a country I've never been to before, where there's a language that I can't say I didn't speak French. I was actually the lifeline of the group because I studied French in 7th grade. So you can imagine how my 7th grade French, nous voulons manger. It's like, oh, manger. So, you know, I was able to bring that to bear. I think some of those things in retrospect were quite dangerous and I wouldn't do them now. But I see them all as beneficial and adding to wisdom in retrospect. And in fairness to Prof. Williams, he was the director at that time. We didn't tell him that we would be doing all the things that we did. It's not like he said, oh, my blessings. Go. We were a bit headstrong in our youth, and we said, hey, we're going for it. So.
Well, I mean, Prof will have a stake on all that you said.
Oh, yeah.
but before that,
you did what?
I'm sure he's getting some views now from what you just said.
Kwame was one of the most outstanding of all the students. I'm not saying it just because he's here. Honestly, he's not like this, so he's right. But gifted. And I actually met, I don't know, Kwame was aware, I met his father in the 80s in a bookstore in Durham, something like Durham or in Raleigh. And I got to meet Professor Asaya Poku at that bookstore because he lectured on traditional African religion before I was even in, I was in the 80s. But I met Kwame at Labadi Beach. My wife's restaurant, she began at Labadi Beach. And I met his mother and his father at the farm. And he was about to start the program. And he came to me speaking in Tree. And I'm 20 years in Ghana and I can't speak Tree. And here's a student, sophomore, junior, Morehouse. So it was very intimidating, or unnerving, or amazing. You know, come to me speaking Tree, and he started the program. And so, honestly, everything he said is 100% true. Some of what he gave you is the sanitized version, obviously. Because that thing about not getting along with his roommate, that was an understatement. Like George Fraser and
I was Muhammad Ali.
Said they don't get along. In fact, it got so bad that they had to convene a meeting with the then Dean of Students, who was Kwaku Bilson. Because obviously it was, you know, it's very because it was four Morehouse students. He talks about the three, very African-centered, very Pan-African, but that fourth one was quite the opposite. If you can imagine, it was the opposite in every way. But I don't know how they became roommates. I would tell you how the conflict emerged. I remember very clearly. But the funny thing to me was that Bilson had to intervene. The three of them meeting. Kwame speaking Tree. And this Morehouse student, you know, they go Tree. And Kwaku said, please, Kwame, speak English. And Kwame said, hey, he's taking Tree, why don't he speak Tree? So of course it was all, you know, I can laugh now, it's funny, but at the time. I didn't have anything about that. You know, first when he took ways to come in, it was just me and 20, 30, or 20 students. So, yeah, other students, students attended. But there's this conflict between two students from the same program. So, honestly, let me just conclude by saying that, yeah, it's been a very transformative experience for everybody. For me, I'm still in international education. Honestly, until this program, I didn't realize a student was studying abroad.
It very much ties into the mission of our organization. Kwame is a testament to the CIEE mission. Our goal basically is to help people gain understanding, acquire knowledge, and develop skills for living in a globally interdependent and culturally diverse world. And you listen to Kwame's story, Dr. Kambon, his story, and how going home, coming back to get a PhD here and being here as a professor, it's a testament to the numerous opportunities that exist on a program like this.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful time. It's important for us to see that until the lion learns to write its own story, the story of the wild will forever continue to glorify the hunter. The common denominator that runs through the various speeches that we've had is that we can move forward as a country and as a continent, as Africa. We can be able to erase that erroneous impression that we have through study abroad programs. We can be able to achieve that global peace that we all seek through study abroad programs. The globalization that we all seek can be achieved through study abroad programs. And our guest speaker, Dr. Kambon, has said a lot, very scintillating, breathtaking, adventurous stories. In fact, when he was doing his presentation, I was just having vivid pictures of all the things that he was saying. I appreciate everything that he has said, and it challenges me more, even as a Ghanaian, to learn the culture very well and to be able to know everything that the beautiful African culture has in store for us. Our professor has done a very lot for us, has done a lot of good for us. He has chaired this program very well. And Professor Mark Williams, I'm so grateful. This is the third time that I'm meeting him. And anytime I meet him, I go home with memories. And today is not an exception. So it is in that vein that we want to thank the organizers of this program for making this possible. And we hope that the many study abroad programs that we have here in the University of Ghana will be able to replicate this fine program so that we'll be able to touch the world. Together will be the world changes that we all seek. So I want to say thank you very much to our guest speaker. I want to say thank you to our chairman, and then to our resident director, Mr. D.C. Jamra. Thanks so much. To the assistant registrar, also thank you so much. And for all of you that made it here, thank you so much. My tree is not too good, but tomorrow at 5 a.m. when you hear the call crow, it's the CIEE crow saying thank you. Thank you.